All right, ready to dive into something huge, Shelley? We're talking mass extinctions today. Think you're ready for this. To uncover, like, the HOW and the WHY behind these totally planet-shifting events.
I think, yeah, once we really dig into what makes an extinction massive, you'll be surprised at how these events have, shaped life as we know it. It's not just about a species here and there, disappearing. It's about a fundamental shift in the balance of life on a global scale.
Okay, so not just, like, your everyday extinctions here. We're talking extinction rates going completely bonkers, statistically off the charts, right? How do scientists even measure that?
You're spot on. Think of it like a background hum, right? There's a natural rate of extinction that's always happening kind of slow and steady. Scientists, they call this the background extinction rate. It's calculated by, well, they look at how long species typically exist in the fossil record before they vanish.
So by studying fossils, geologic layers, scientists can be like, okay, normally this is how many species we'd expect to disappear over this amount of time.
Exactly. It's like our baseline. Now, a mass extinction, it's like a sudden spike in that hum, a period where the rate of extinction just skyrockets way beyond what we'd expect for the fossil record. And that's when alarm bells should be ringing.
Alarm bells blaring that something huge is happening to the planet. So how many of these alarm bell events have there been? I've heard of the Big Five.
Yes, the big five. These are like the major players in extinction history, the ones that cause the most, widespread devastation. They really stand out in the fossil record like giant warning signs.
Okay, hit me with it. The Big Five, let's have them, starting with the oldest.
All right, so picture this. Life is just starting to gain a foothold, mostly in the oceans. Then bam! The late Ordovician extinction, about 445 million years ago, a massive ice age, throws the planet into a deep freeze. Sea levels plummet, wiping out a huge chunk of marine life.
Like hitting the reset button on, like, the planet's ecosystems.
Exactly. Then we fast forward to about 375 million years ago, and that's when we get the late Devonian extinction. And this one is a bit of a mystery, even for scientists. It's like a paleontological cold case. We know it lasted millions of years, devastated reefs, marine life, but the exact cause, it's still debated today.
So we don't have all the answers. Makes you wonder what they'll say about our time millions of years from now. All right, what's next?
Get ready, because this is a big one. The end Permian extinction, about
Okay.
252 million years ago. But you might know it by its, more dramatic name, the Great Dying.
Yeah, Great Dying doesn't exactly inspire happy thoughts, does it?
Roughly 96% of marine species, and get this, about 70% of terrestrial vertebrates, gone, vanished,
Right.
wiped out. It was brutal. And the evidence points to, well, massive volcanic eruptions as the likely culprit.
Volcanoes, they're impressive even when they're not causing mass extinctions. Okay, so that's three. Two to go in our Big Five. What's next?
Life slowly starts to recover, right? And then bam, about 201 million years ago, the Triassic extinction shakes things up again. This one, it paves the way for the rise of the dinosaurs, but not before taking out a bunch of marine species. And the likely cause, you guessed it, more volcanic activity.
Volcanoes, always stirring the pot. All right, last but not least, we have to talk about the one everyone's thinking about, the one that took out the dinosaurs.
Exactly, the end Cretaceous extinction, or, as it's known in the science world, the KPG extinction. This happened around 66 million years ago, and yeah, it's definitely the one that captures our imaginations. It's a wild ride, and we'll get into all the details in a bit.
I can't wait. But before we get there, you mentioned these Big Five, or the heavy hitters. So were there other extinction events that didn't quite make the cut?
Oh, absolutely. Earth's history is full of extinction events. But to be considered one of the Big Five, well, you have to be a big deal. It has to be global, wipe out a huge percentage of all life, not just the intensity of the event itself, but like the ripple effect on the planet's ecosystems.
So like the difference between a hurricane and, a gentle breeze, both involve wind, but the impact is a little different.
Perfect analogy. Take the Rochefort impact in France. Happened around 201 million years ago. An asteroid slams into Earth, leaving a crater 25 kilometers wide.
Talk about leaving a mark.
Right. Significant event, for sure. But when you look at the fossil record, you don't see that same level of global disruption as we see with the Big Five.
So Rochefort, big deal locally, but the Big Five were game changers for the whole planet, which is, I don't know, both fascinating and a little terrifying. But speaking of fascinating and terrifying, we have to talk about the extinction event that never fails to capture our imaginations, the one that took down the dinosaurs.
Ah, yes, the end Cretaceous extinction. It's one that grabs the headlines, and for good reason. Not only did it wipe out those incredible creatures, but it's also the most recent, which means we have a wealth of geological and fossil evidence to dig into.
It's like having a front row seat to a planetary drama, you know? So what do the rocks and fossils tell us? Was it a slow decline for the dinosaurs, or was it something sudden and catastrophic?
Well, for a while, scientists went back and forth on this. Some paleontologists, they believed in what they called a stepwise extinction. They thought maybe the dinosaurs and other species, they died out gradually over millions of years.
What made them think it was a gradual process?
The fossil record, mainly. Back then, they were working with limited evidence, and it was really tough to pinpoint the exact timing of when different species disappeared. And when they plotted out the last known appearances of various species, it kind of looked like extinctions were happening in steps, like some groups were disappearing earlier than others.
So it seemed like a slow fade out rather than a sudden crash.
Exactly. But you know how science is. There are always those who suspect there's more to the story.
Always questioning, always digging deeper. So what shook things up? What made scientists question this stepwise idea?
It was a physicist, actually, Luis Alvarez, and his son, Walter. He's a geologist. In the late 1970s, they were studying this layer of clay found all over the world. And it marks this, boundary between the Cretaceous and Paleogene periods.
Oh, okay.
What geologists call the KPG boundary.
The KPG boundary.
Like a giant geological timestamp for the extinction event.
So this clay layer, this holds the clues, potentially, to the dinosaurs' fate.
Exactly. And what they found was they discovered these, unusually high levels of iridium in this clay layer.
Iridium?
Now,
What is that?
it's pretty rare on Earth's surface, but it's much more common in asteroids and comets.
Wait, hold on. Iridium asteroids? Are we about to connect the dots here?
You got it.
Okay.
This finding, it led them to propose this, pretty bold idea that the KPG extinction, it wasn't gradual at all, but rather the result of an asteroid impact.
The Alvarez hypothesis.
Yes.
But I'm guessing not everyone in the scientific community was like, yes, let's rewrite all the history books now.
Oh, there was pushback, for sure. It was a radical theory. Scientists, rightfully so, they demanded evidence. Extraordinary evidence. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so what was the smoking gun? The Chicxulub crater.
Of course.
In the Yucatan Peninsula. This was a game changer.
This is it. This is the crater that sealed the deal.
Exactly. This massive crater, it's buried beneath the peninsula in the Gulf of Mexico, but it's estimated to be about 150 kilometers in diameter, and get this, 20 kilometers deep.
Oh my God.
And its age lines up perfectly with the KPG boundary. And its sheer size, it matches the energy release you'd expect from an impact that could scatter iridium all over the planet.
Okay, so paint the picture for me here. An asteroid, 10 to 15 kilometers wide, slams into Earth at 72,000 kilometers per hour. That's 40 times faster than the speed of sound. What happens next?
Well, first, you have the immediate blast, which would have been unlike anything we can even imagine, honestly. This isn't just a regional event. This thing releases energy equivalent to, get this, billions of atomic bombs.
Oh, yeah.
It triggers massive earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, tsunamis that would have reshaped coastlines for thousands of kilometers.
Thousands. It's just impossible to even wrap your mind around that kind of devastation.
And those are just the immediate effects.
Right.
The after effects would have been just as devastating. Think massive wildfires raging across continents, triggered by all the superheated debris ejected into the atmosphere.
It's like a scene ripped straight out of a disaster movie.
Except it was very real. And it gets worse. All that dust and debris in the atmosphere blocks out the sun, plunges the Earth into this long period of darkness, causes global temperatures to plummet.
Wow.
This impact winter, as it's called, it would have been devastating for life on Earth, especially plants and plankton, which, form the base of the food chain.
So it's not just the impact, it's this domino effect of catastrophic events that follow. The planet was hit with a 1-2 punch.
Exactly. And while the asteroid impact gets a lot of the attention, there was another major player on the scene at the time.
Right, the Deccan traps.
Yes.
The volcanoes, weren't those erupting around the same time?
They were. These eruptions were enormous, spewing out lava and gases for hundreds of thousands of years.
Hundreds of thousands of years.
And scientists have gone back and forth debating whether the Deccan traps played a role in the extinction or if it was all the asteroids doing.
So what's the verdict? Was it a team effort?
The thinking now is that while the Deccan traps were significant and may have been stressing the environment, the asteroid was the knockout punch.
Wow. It's still incredible to think that life on Earth bounced back from all of that.
Right.
But how? What survived? And how did they manage to rebuild?
Well, that's the beauty of evolution, right? It's a numbers game. Even in the darkest of times, some organisms, they find a way. And it's important to remember, every species alive today, including us, is descended from those that survived the KPG extinction.
That is just, it's mind-blowing. So while the dinosaurs were, well, tragically unlucky, their loss opened up opportunities for other creatures to thrive.
Exactly. In the immediate aftermath of the impact, the oceans, they would have been a very different place. The marine food chain basically collapsed for a period of thousands of years. Scientists even call this the Strangelove Ocean period, named after that dark comedy film, Dr. Strangelove, because it was this world in chaos, struggling to find a new balance.
Oh, wow, I've never heard that. Strangelove Ocean.
Yeah.
So amidst all the darkness and the chaos, certain characteristics would have given some species a leg up in the survival game?
Well, small creatures, like our early mammal ancestors, they had a definite advantage. They didn't need as much food to survive. They could easily scurry into tiny spaces for shelter, made them masters of adaptation in a post-apocalyptic world.
So small and adaptable, those are key. What about their diet? Did that play a role?
Oh, absolutely. Animals that weren't picky eaters, the ones that could, switch things up, find food wherever they could, they had a much higher chance of making it. And then, of course, there were those species that were able to burrow underground or find refuge in other ways, escaping the worst of the environmental upheaval on the surface.
So size, adaptability, resourcefulness, these were the keys to surviving the KPG extinction.
Exactly. And one fascinating example of a successful survivor is Purgatorius.
Purgatorius. That doesn't sound familiar.
It was a small, rat-sized mammal, lived during the Paleocene epoch, just after the dinosaurs disappeared. We've found its fossilized remains in Montana and Western Canada.
Okay, so what's so special about this little guy? Why is he so important?
Well, it's thought to be an early ancestor of primates, which of course includes us.
Wow.
So in a way, we owe our existence to that asteroid impact.
It makes you wonder how different life on Earth would be if that asteroid had never hit. Maybe the dinosaurs would still rule the planet and we wouldn't be here at all.
It's a question that definitely sparks the imagination, and it's why studying these past extinction events is so crucial, They offer a glimpse into how life on Earth responds to catastrophic change, how new ecosystems emerge from the ashes of the old, and just how fragile the balance of life can be.
Speaking of fragile balance, what about the environmental challenges we face today? Are there any past extinction events that might be particularly relevant to understanding our current situation?
It's fascinating, actually, because we do see echoes of past extinctions in what's happening today. The current biodiversity crisis that we're facing, it might not involve an asteroid, but it has some striking similarities to events like the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum, or PTM for short.
PTM, that rings a bell. Remind me what happened then.
Okay, so imagine this. About 56 million years ago, the Earth gets hit with this massive heat wave. We're talking a global temperature increase of about 5 to 8 degrees Celsius, but over a period of just 10,000 to 20,000 years.
Wow.
Which is incredibly fast in geological terms.
So a sudden fever on a planetary scale.
Yeah.
Yikes. What caused it? Do we know?
Well, the jury's still out on the exact cause, but the leading theory is that a massive amount of carbon was released into the atmosphere, possibly from volcanic eruptions or the destabilization of methane deposits on the ocean floor.
Interesting. A massive carbon release, you say? Sounds a little familiar, doesn't it?
It does. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. While the PTM definitely caused major changes in ecosystems and led to some extinctions, it wasn't as devastating as some of the big five that we've talked about. Many species were able to adapt or migrate to more suitable habitats.
So even with a rapidly warming planet, life found a way. That's a little reassuring, I guess.
It does offer a glimmer of hope, right? But, and this is a big but, the rate of change is crucial. The warming during the PTM was fast, but it was still slower than the rate of warming we're seeing today, largely due to human activities, of course.
That is a sobering thought.
Yeah.
So what does this blast from the past tell us about our current predicament?
It highlights the incredible resilience of life, but it also underscores the very real dangers of rapid environmental change. The rate of extinctions we're seeing now is already comparable to some of those big five events in terms of speed.
That is a chilling thought. If history has taught us anything, it's that ignoring the alarm bells of extinction can have devastating consequences. It's like we're watching a slow-motion replay of these massive extinction events, but this time we're the ones, with our hands on the controls.
Yeah, and it really makes you wonder, like, how bad along it's really? Are we on the brink of another mass extinction? Or is that, exaggerating things?
Well, we've been diving deep into the research, and it's clear. The rate of species extinction today is way higher than that natural background rate we talked about.
It is, but even getting an exact number is, well, it's tricky because, believe it or not, we haven't even identified all the species that exist on Earth.
Wait, really?
Oh yeah, there are probably millions of species out there that we haven't even discovered yet.
So we're losing species before we even know they exist. That's heartbreaking. But for the species we do know about, what's the situation?
There's this organization, the International Union for Conservation of Nature, or IUCN. They keep this running list of threatened species called the Red List.
So it's like a global health chart for biodiversity?
Exactly. And, well, when you look at the numbers, it's a stark reminder of the challenges we face. A significant percentage of the species assessed by the IUCN are classified as threatened with extinction.
Do we have any, hard numbers on that? How many species are we actually talking about?
As of 2022, the IUCN has assessed over 150,000 species, and a staggering 28% of those are classified as threatened.
28%.
Yeah, meaning they're either critically endangered, or vulnerable.
That's not just a handful of species, that's a global crisis.
It is. And unlike those past mass extinctions, the ones that were often triggered by a single catastrophic event, asteroid impact, volcanic eruptions, that kind of thing, the current crisis is being driven by a whole bunch of factors, and a lot of them, well, they're directly related to us, to human activity.
Yeah, I was gonna say, habitat loss has got to be a huge one.
Probably the biggest threat. As human populations grow, we're converting more and more land for our own needs. Agriculture, cities, you name it. And this destroys the habitats of countless species, pushing them towards extinction.
We're essentially squeezing them out of existence.
That's a good way to put it. And then on top of that, you've got climate change, which is altering habitats, disrupting these delicate ecosystems, making life much more difficult for so many species.
And we can't forget about invasive species.
Oh, right. When a species is introduced to a new environment, it can totally disrupt the balance. They can outcompete native species, disrupt food chains, even spread diseases.
It's not just about what we're doing to the environment, it's what we're taking out of it too. Overexploitation.
Exactly. Overfishing, overhunting, the illegal wildlife trade, these all put enormous pressure on species, pushing them towards the brink.
It's a pretty bleak picture. Are there any glimmers of hope in all of this? Are there any signs that we can, turn things around?
Well, the good news is, awareness of this crisis is growing. People are starting to understand that biodiversity, it's crucial. Not just for the planet, but for us.
Okay, that's encouraging. So what are people doing to, actually make a difference?
There's a lot of effort underway. Conservation organizations are working tirelessly to protect habitats, restore ecosystems, and combat the illegal wildlife trade.
So protecting what's left and rebuilding what's been lost.
Exactly. Scientists are working hard, too, to better understand what's driving these extinctions and to develop new strategies for conservation.
It's a race against time, isn't it?
It is. But there have been some incredible success stories. Efforts to reintroduce threatened species back into the wild have made a real impact.
Oh, really? Any that come to mind?
Absolutely. The California condor, the black-footed ferret, the Arabian oryx, all species that were this close to extinction. But thanks to, really dedicated conservation efforts, their populations are rebounding.
That's amazing. It shows that we can make a difference.
We can. But it's going to take a global effort. We need to fundamentally change our relationship with nature, to start thinking of conservation not as something extra, but as an essential part of how we live.
It's a call to action for sure, and a reminder that the story of extinction, it's still being written, and we all have a role to play in shaping how it ends.
We do. By learning from the past, recognizing the urgency of the present, and taking action to protect the diversity of life on Earth, we can help write a more hopeful future for all of us.
It has been quite a journey exploring the rise and fall of species throughout Earth's history. We've uncovered some hard truths, but also some really inspiring stories of resilience and the power of, coming together to take action.
It's a good reminder.
Yeah.
Even in the face of, these huge, immense challenges, there's always hope. And the choices we make today, they'll determine the fate of life on Earth for generations to come.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of extinctions. Remember, it's not just about what we stand to lose, but what we can still save.
That's right. And on that note, Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep asking questions, because the more we understand about our planet and the life it sustains, the better equipped we'll be to protect it.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Until next time, deep divers.